The stagecoach lurched to a stop in front of the dusty depot in Vulture City, Arizona Territory, and Helena Walsh stepped down onto ground that felt as unforgiving as everything she had left behind in Missouri. She was 24 years old and looked 10 years older in that moment, her face drawn with exhaustion that went bone deep. The journey had taken 3 weeks, and she had spent every mile of it wondering if she was making the biggest mistake of her life. Her hands, though gentle by nature, trembled as she reached for her single carpet bag. Everything she owned in the world fit into that one worn piece of luggage. The town sprawled before her in the harsh afternoon sun of June 1882, a collection of weathered buildings that seemed to shimmer in the heat. Vulture City had sprung up around the gold mine years earlier, and though the boom days were fading, enough people remained to keep the place alive. Barely. Helena pressed a hand to her lower back and winced. The baby she had lost 3 months ago still haunted her body with phantom pains, just as her husband's death 6 months before that haunted her heart. Daniel had been a good man, taken by pneumonia in the coldest winter Missouri had seen in decades. She had been 4 months along when they buried him. The grief had stolen the child from her womb 2 months later. Her sister Margaret had written to her about a teaching position in Vulture City, insisting Helena needed a fresh start somewhere far from all the memories. Margaret lived in Phoenix now with her husband, close enough to visit, but far enough that Helena would have to build her own life. The school board had hired her based on Margaret's recommendation and Helena's credentials. She would start teaching in the fall when the children returned from helping with harvests and ranch work. But that was months away, and Helena needed work now. She had $17 to her name. The depot manager, a grizzled man with kind eyes, pointed her toward the boarding house. "Mrs. Fletcher runs a decent place. Clean sheets, good food. She could use some help too if you are looking for work." Helena thanked him and started walking, her boots kicking up small clouds of dust with each step. The town was smaller than she had imagined. A main street with a general store, a saloon, a church, a handful of other businesses, and houses scattered beyond like seeds thrown by a careless hand. The mountains rose in the distance, stark and beautiful in a way that made her chest ache. Mrs. Fletcher was a practical woman in her 50s who took one look at Helena and sat her down in the kitchen with a cup of strong coffee and a thick slice of bread with butter. "You look like you have been to hell and back, dear," something like that. Helena's voice came out rougher than she intended. "The teaching position." "Yes, madam, I am Helena Walsh, Margaret's sister. She wrote to me about you." Mrs. Fletcher studied her with sharp eyes that missed nothing. "Teaching does not start until September. What will you do until then?" "I was hoping to find work. Anything, really." Mrs. Fletcher nodded slowly. "I could use help here. Room and board plus $3 a week. Cooking, cleaning, washing linens. It is hard work." "I am not afraid of hard work." "Good. You can start tomorrow. Today you rest." The room Mrs. Fletcher showed her to was small but clean, with a bed that looked like heaven after the stagecoach. Helena set her carpetbag down and sat on the edge of the mattress, suddenly overwhelmed by the reality of where she was. This was her life now. This room, this town, this strange desert landscape so different from the green hills of home. She allowed herself exactly 5 minutes to cry, then washed her face in the basin, unpacked her few belongings, and went downstairs to see if Mrs. Fletcher needed help with supper. Staying busy was the only way to survive grief. She had learned that lesson well. The next morning, Helena woke before dawn and got to work. Mrs. Fletcher had 6 boarders, mostly men who worked at the mine or on nearby ranches. Helena cooked breakfast, served it, cleaned up after, and then started on the mountain of laundry. By noon, Her back ached and her hands were red from the washboard and lye soap, but her mind was blissfully quiet. She was hanging sheets on the line behind the boarding house when she saw him for the first time. He rode into town on a bay horse, sitting easy in the saddle like he was born there. Tall and lean, with dark hair that needed cutting and a face that would have been handsome if it was not so weathered by sun and wind. He wore typical ranch clothes, nothing fancy, and he moved with the quiet confidence of a man who knew exactly who he was and felt no need to prove it to anyone. Helena watched him dismount in front of the general store, then felt foolish for staring. She turned back to her work, pinning up another sheet. "That is Quinn Norris," Mrs. Fletcher said from the back door, making Helena jump. "Has the ranch about 8 miles north of here. Keeps to himself mostly, lost his parents when he was young, built that ranch from nothing." "I see." Helena kept her eyes on the laundry. "He is a good man, quiet but good. Comes to town once a week for supplies, never causes trouble." Helena wondered why Mrs. Fletcher was telling her this, but she did not ask. She finished hanging the laundry and moved on to the next task. Over the following weeks, she fell into a rhythm. Wake before dawn, cook, clean, wash, mend, cook again, clean again, fall into bed exhausted. It was good. It kept her from thinking too much. She attended church on Sundays, met some of the other townspeople, and slowly began to feel less like a ghost and more like a person again. She saw Quinn Norris every week when he came to town. He always arrived mid-morning on Thursdays, conducted his business with minimal conversation, and left. He nodded politely to people but rarely stopped to chat. Helena found herself watching for him without meaning to, curious about this quiet rancher who seemed as solitary as she felt. In early August, Mrs. Fletcher sent Helena to the general store for supplies. "Get a good amount," she said, handing Helena a list and some money. "We will be canning soon, and I need to stock up." The store smelled of coffee and leather and the indefinable scent of dry goods. Mr. Peterson, the proprietor, greeted Helena warmly. She had been in enough times now that he knew her name and her story, or at least the version she had told people. Widowed, come west for a fresh start, teaching in the fall. She was reading through Mrs. Fletcher's list when the door opened and Quinn Norris walked in. They were the only customers in the store. Helena felt suddenly, acutely aware of him in the way she had not been aware of another person since Daniel died. It startled her, this flutter of something that was not quite nervousness and not quite interest but somewhere in between. He nodded to her. "Madam." "Sir." She turned back to her list, but she had lost her place. Quinn conducted his business with Mr. Peterson in that quiet way of his voice low and steady. Helena found herself listening to it, the cadence of it, the slight drawl that suggested he had grown up somewhere south of here. She was reaching for a bag of flour on a high shelf when she felt him step up beside her. "Let me get that for you." He was tall enough to reach it easily. He handed her the bag and their fingers brushed. His hands were work-roughened, scarred in places, but there was a gentleness in how he handled the flour, making sure she had it secure before he let go. "Thank you," Helena said, looking up at him. Their eyes met and something passed between them. A recognition, perhaps. A sense of two people who carried similar weights. "You are welcome." He held her gaze for a moment longer, then tipped his hat and left the store. Helena stood there with the bag of flour in her arms, her heart beating faster than it should. That night, she lay awake thinking about him. About the way he moved, the way he spoke, the feeling she had gotten when their eyes met. She felt guilty for thinking about him at all. Daniel had been gone less than a year. What kind of wife was she to notice another man? But Daniel was gone, and she was still here, still alive, still only 24 years old with so much life ahead of her. She knew he would want her to be happy, to find love again someday. Knowing it and feeling ready for it were different things entirely. The summer heat intensified. Helena helped Mrs. Fletcher with the canning, putting up jars and jars of vegetables and fruits that would see them through the winter. She grew stronger, the hollows in her face filling in, the exhaustion in her eyes gradually fading. The desert agreed with her in ways she had not expected. The dry heat, the vast open spaces, the star-filled nights that seemed to go on forever. She saw Quinn Norris every Thursday, and each time their interactions grew slightly less brief. A nod became a greeting. A greeting became a comment about the weather. Small steps, but steps nonetheless. In late August, a dust storm blew through Vulture City. Helena had never experienced anything like it. The sky turned brown, the wind howled, and grit got into everything despite closed windows and doors. The boarders huddled inside, restless and irritable. When it finally passed the next morning, everything was covered in a fine layer of dust. Helena was outside sweeping the porch when she saw a horse and rider approaching. Even covered in dust, she recognized Quinn Norris. He dismounted in front of the boarding house, and she saw that he was favoring his left arm. "Mr. Norris, are you all right?" Got thrown during the storm. Horse spooked, nothing serious. But his face was pale under the dust and sun-browned skin. "Let me see." He looked like he might refuse, but something in her expression must have convinced him. He followed her inside to the kitchen, where Mrs. Fletcher took one look at him and pointed to a chair. "Sit. Helena, get the medical kit." Helena had tended to Daniel during his illness, and before that, she had helped her mother nurse neighbors through various ailments. She knew her way around basic doctoring. She helped Quinn remove his shirt, trying not to notice the muscled expanse of his chest and shoulders, the scars that spoke of a hard life. His shoulder was badly bruised and swollen. She felt it carefully, watching his face for signs of pain. He barely flinched, though she knew it must hurt. "I do not think anything is broken," she said, "but it is a bad bruise. You should rest it." "Cannot rest. Got a ranch to run." "Even ranchers need to heal." She looked at him directly, and he looked back, and again there was that sense of recognition, of understanding. "I will be more careful," he said finally. She made a sling for him from a clean dish towel, insisting he wear it at least for a few days. He submitted to her ministrations with a patience that surprised her. Mrs. Fletcher served him coffee and some leftover breakfast, and they sat in the kitchen together, an oddly comfortable silence settling over them. "How are you finding Vulture City?" Quinn asked, wrapping his good hand around the coffee cup. "It is different from Missouri, but I like it. The openness of it, the sky. It can be hard on people who are not used to it, the heat, the isolation. I do not mind being alone." The words came out more honestly than she intended. He studied her with those dark eyes. "Neither do I. But there is a difference between choosing to be alone and having it chosen for you." Helena felt something crack open inside her chest. "Yes, there is." They talked for another hour. He told her about his ranch, how he had started with nothing but determination and a small inheritance from an uncle. How he had built it slowly, every fence post and building with his own hands. She told him about teaching, about her love of books and learning, about how much she was looking forward to starting in September. She did not tell him about Daniel or the baby. Those wounds were still too raw. When he finally left, promising to be careful with his shoulder, Helena felt different somehow. Lighter. Like she had been holding her breath for months and finally remembered how to exhale. Mrs. Fletcher gave her a knowing look but said nothing, for which Helena was grateful. The next Thursday, Quinn came to town as usual, and this time he stopped by the boarding house specifically to thank Helena for her help. His shoulder was healing well. She invited him to stay for lunch, and he accepted. It became a pattern. Every Thursday, he would finish his errands and come to the boarding house. Sometimes they talked. Sometimes they sat in companionable silence. He was not a man who needed to fill every moment with words, and Helena appreciated that about him. She learned that he was 27, that he had grown up in Texas before making his way to Arizona territory, that his parents had died of fever when he was 16. He had worked as a ranch hand for years, saving every penny until he had enough to buy his own land. He learned that she was widowed, though she still could not bring herself to tell him about the baby. He did not press for details, seeming to understand that some stories needed time before they could be told. September arrived, and with it, the start of the school year. The schoolhouse was a simple building at the edge of town, one room with benches and a wood stove and a blackboard that had seen better days. Helena had 14 students ranging in age from 6 to 15. They were a mix of ranch children and town children, some eager to learn, some less so. Teaching filled her with a joy she had not felt in a long time. She loved the challenge of it, the reward of seeing a child's face light up with understanding. She taught reading, writing, arithmetic, history, geography. She read to them from classic books and encouraged them to tell their own stories. Quinn came to town on a Thursday in mid-September, and she invited him to visit the school. He stood in the back of the room, hat in his hands, watching her teach with an expression she could not quite read. Afterward, he helped her carry supplies back to the boarding house. "You are good with them," he said. "The children, you are patient. I always wanted to be a teacher, even when I was young. You are living your dream then." She considered this. "Part of it, yes." He looked at her, understanding in his eyes. There was more to her dream, she knew. A family, children of her own, a home filled with love and laughter. But those dreams felt impossibly far away, like something that belonged to a different version of herself. In October, Quinn invited her to visit his ranch. Mrs. Fletcher agreed to let her have a Sunday afternoon off, and Quinn arrived with a gentle mare for her to ride. The journey took a little over an hour, and Helena drank in the landscape. The desert was beautiful in a spare, honest way. Saguaro cacti stood like sentinels. Mountains rose in the distance, their peaks touched with early snow. The air was clear and cool, autumn finally bringing relief from the summer heat. Quinn's ranch sat in a valley with a creek running through it. The house was small but well built, with a porch that faced the mountains. There was a barn, a corral, fences that looked sturdy and straight. Everything showed the care of a man who took pride in his work. "It is wonderful," Helena said, and meant it. He showed her around, introducing her to his horses, his small herd of cattle. He had a dog, a border collie named Smoke, who took to Helena immediately. They walked along the creek, and Quinn pointed out the cottonwoods that turned gold in the fall, the places where deer came to drink. They ate lunch on the porch, simple food that Quinn had prepared himself. Bread, cheese, apples, cold beef. They talked about everything and nothing. Helena felt more relaxed than she had in months, maybe years. "I come here every day," Quinn said, looking out at the view, "and I still cannot believe it is mine, that I built this. You should be proud. You have created something real. Lonelier than I thought it would be, though." He said it quietly, almost like he had not meant to say it aloud. Helena's heart ached for him, for herself, for all the lonely people in the world trying to build lives from scratch. "Yes, it is." He turned to her. "I like your company, Helena. I want you to know that. These Thursdays, they have become the best part of my week." She felt heat rise to her cheeks. "I like your company too, Quinn. I do not want to presume anything. I know you are still grieving, but I wanted you to know how I feel." Helena took a breath. "I was married for 3 years. My husband Daniel was a good man, He died of pneumonia last January." The words came easier than she expected. "I loved him very much. I am sorry for your loss. Thank you." She paused, gathering courage. "There is more. I was carrying a child when he died. I lost the baby 2 months later." Quinn reached over and took her hand. His palm was warm and rough and steady. "Helena, I am so sorry. I came here to start over, to find a way to live with the grief instead of being buried by it, and it has been working. The teaching, the work, this place, you." She looked at him. "I like you, Quinn. More than I thought I would be ready to like anyone. It scares me. Life is scary. Love is scarier, but the alternative is being alone forever, and I do not think either of us wants that. Love," the word hung between them. "I am getting ahead of myself." He squeezed her hand gently. "But yes. I think I could love you, Helena Walsh. I think maybe I already do." Her eyes filled with tears, but they were not sad tears. "I think I could love you too." They sat there on the porch, holding hands, watching the sun move across the sky. It was not a declaration of forever, not yet. But it was a beginning, and that was enough. Over the next months, their relationship deepened. Quinn came to town every week, and Helena visited the ranch every few weeks. They took things slowly, both of them aware of the wounds they carried, but slowly was good. Slowly meant building something solid. Helena told Quinn about Daniel, about the life they had planned, about the crushing grief of losing both husband and child within months. Quinn listened without judgment, just holding her when the memories became too much. Quinn told Helena about his own losses. His mother dying first, then his father a week later, both taken by the same fever. Being 16 and suddenly alone in the world. The years of hard work and loneliness, building toward a future he was not sure would ever come. They understood each other in the way that people who have survived terrible things can understand each other. Winter came to the desert, cold nights and mild days. Helena continued teaching, continued living at the boarding house. But more and more she found herself thinking about the ranch, about what it would be like to live there with Quinn. In December, Quinn asked her to marry him. They were at the ranch, sitting by the fire in his small living room. Smoke was asleep at their feet. The wind howled outside, but inside it was warm and peaceful. "I know it has not been long," Quinn said, "but I am sure. I love you, Helena. I want to build a life with you. I want you to be my wife." Helena felt tears slide down her cheeks. "I love you too. Yes, I will marry you." He pulled her into his arms and kissed her, and it was nothing like kissing Daniel had been, but it was right in its own way. It was them, their story, their new beginning. They married in January 1883, a simple ceremony in the Vulture City church with Mrs. Fletcher and a few friends as witnesses. Helena wore a blue dress that Mrs. Fletcher had helped her make. Quinn wore his best clothes and looked nervous and happy and handsome. After the ceremony, they had a small celebration at the boarding house. Then Quinn helped Helena load her belongings into the wagon, and they rode out to the ranch together as husband and wife. That first night in their home together, they were both nervous. They undressed in the lamplight, and Helena saw Quinn really look at her for the first time, saw the desire and love in his eyes. "You are beautiful," he whispered. She reached for him, and they came together with a tenderness that made her heart ache. It was different from her first marriage, but it was good. It was healing. They learned each other's bodies slowly, patiently, building intimacy with the same care they had built their relationship. Afterward, they lay tangled together, and Helena felt a peace she had not known in almost 2 years. "Are you happy?" Quinn asked, his hand tracing patterns on her bare shoulder. "I am. Are you?" "More than I ever thought I could be." Helena continued teaching, making the ride into town and back several times a week. It was a long commute, but she loved her students and was not ready to give it up. Quinn supported her completely, never suggesting she should quit. They fell into the rhythms of marriage. Quinn worked the ranch and Helena helped when she was not teaching. She learned to ride better, learned about cattle and horses, learned the land. She cooked meals in their small kitchen. They talked for hours every night. They made love and grew closer with each passing day. In March, Helena realized she was pregnant. The joy was immediate and overwhelming. So was the terror. She told Quinn that night, watching his face carefully. She saw his happiness but also his concern for her. "I am scared," she admitted. "After what happened before." He pulled her close. "I am scared too, but we will get through this together. Whatever happens, we face it together." Helena visited the doctor in Phoenix, wanting more care than was available in Vulture City. The doctor, an older man with gentle hands, examined her carefully. "You are healthy," he told her. "The pregnancy looks good. What happened before? Sometimes these things happen and there is no clear reason. Try not to worry too much. Stress is not good for you or the baby." Easier said than done, but Helena tried. She continued teaching through the end of the school year in May, then took the summer to rest and prepare. Quinn was endlessly careful with her, almost comically so. She had to remind him that she was pregnant, not made of glass. Margaret visited in June, staying for a week. She was delighted about the baby and reassured Helena constantly. "You are glowing," Margaret said. "You look so happy here. This life suits you." "It does," Helena agreed. "I did not expect to be this happy again. But Quinn, this place, it has given me a life I love. He is a good man. Anyone can see how much he loves you." The summer heat was intense, but Helena stayed cool by the creek, reading and resting. Quinn hired a young man from town to help with the ranch work so he could spend more time with her. They talked about names, about the future, about what kind of parents they wanted to be. In September, their son was born. The labor was long and difficult, and there were moments when Helena was certain she would not survive it. But the doctor was there, and Mrs. Fletcher, and most importantly Quinn, holding her hand and whispering encouragement. When the baby finally arrived, squalling and red-faced and absolutely perfect, Helena burst into tears. "A boy," the doctor announced, placing the baby in her arms. "A healthy boy." Helena looked down at her son, this miracle she had been terrified she would never have. She looked up at Quinn and saw tears streaming down his face. "He is perfect," Quinn whispered. "You are perfect. Thank you." They named him Thomas Daniel Norris, honoring Helena's late husband while giving their son his own identity. Thomas had Quinn's dark hair and Helena's eyes, and from the start, he was a calm, sweet-natured baby. Those early months were exhausting and wonderful. Helena had never known she could function on so little sleep or feel so much love. Quinn was an involved father, getting up with her for night feedings, changing diapers, rocking Thomas when he fussed. Mrs. Fletcher visited often, bringing food and help. Margaret came when she could. The community of Vulture City rallied around them, as small communities do. Helena decided not to return to teaching, at least not for a few years. She wanted to be home with Thomas. It was the right decision for her, though she missed the students. The ranch continued to grow. Quinn expanded his herd, bought more land. Money was tight sometimes, but they always had enough. They had each other and their son, and that was everything. When Thomas was 6 months old, Helena realized she was pregnant again. This time the fear was less overwhelming. Her body had proven it could carry a child to term. She was healthy and strong. But still, she was careful, and Quinn was even more protective than before. Their daughter Sarah was born in the summer of 1885, an easy birth compared to Thomas. She had red hair like Helena's grandmother and a fierce spirit from day one. Quinn fell in love with her instantly, this tiny girl who already had him wrapped around her finger. Life was full and rich. 2 children, a ranch, a marriage built on love and respect and genuine partnership. Helena sometimes thought about Daniel, about the life they had planned that never came to be. She would always love him, always carry a piece of him in her heart. But she loved Quinn too, differently but just as deeply. Thomas grew into a curious, gentle boy who loved animals and books. Sarah was spirited and adventurous, always into something. They were different but close, the way siblings should be. When Thomas was 4 and Sarah was 2, Helena discovered she was pregnant once more. Their third child, a daughter they named Grace, was born in 1888. She was a perfect combination of her siblings, calm like Thomas but with Sarah's determination. The ranch prospered. Quinn became known throughout the territory as a fair dealer and a skilled rancher. Helena occasionally took on a student or two for private lessons, keeping her hand in teaching while raising her children. They built an addition onto the house, making more room for their growing family. They planted trees around the property, started a garden. The ranch became not just a place to work but a true home. Years passed in that way that they do, quickly and slowly at the same time. Thomas grew tall like his father. Sarah learned to ride almost before she could walk. Grace was the family peacemaker, always smoothing over arguments between her siblings. In 1890, when Helena was 32 and Quinn 35, they celebrated their 7th wedding anniversary. The children were asleep, and they sat on the porch together, watching the stars. "Do you ever regret it?" Helena asked. "Taking on a widow with so much grief." Quinn pulled her close. "Never, not once. You gave me everything I did not even know I needed. A family, love, a reason to build something that will last beyond myself. You gave me a second chance at happiness. I did not think I would ever feel whole again, but you made me whole." They sat in comfortable silence, the kind that comes from years of knowing someone deeply. Helena thought about the woman she had been when she arrived in Vulture City 8 years ago, tired and grieving and lost. She thought about how Quinn had given her space to heal while quietly offering her his heart. "I love you," she said, "more than I could ever put into words. I love you too. Always have, always will." The years continued to unfold. Thomas announced at 14 that he wanted to be a veterinarian, having inherited his parents' gentleness with animals. Sarah wanted to be a rancher like her father, already working alongside him every chance she got. Grace, at 10, was still figuring out her path, but loved learning everything her mother could teach her. Quinn and Helena grew older together, their hair graying, their bodies bearing the marks of a life well lived. But their love never faded. If anything, it deepened with time the way good things do. They added a few more acres to the ranch. They traveled to Phoenix occasionally, even made a trip to San Francisco once, but they always came back to the desert, to the place they had built together. Helena sometimes taught at the school again when they needed a substitute teacher. She loved being back in that role, though she was always happy to return home to the ranch. On their 20th wedding anniversary in 1903, their children threw them a party. Friends from all over the territory came. There was music and dancing and so much laughter. Helena stood with Quinn in the middle of it all, overwhelmed by how rich their life had become. "We did good," Quinn said, his arm around her waist. "We did better than good. We did beautiful." That night, after everyone had gone home and the children were in bed, Quinn and Helena made love with the passion and tenderness of people who had spent decades learning how to love each other well. Thomas went off to study veterinary medicine in 1895, breaking Helena's heart and making her proud in equal measure. He came home summers to help on the ranch and eventually set up a practice in Phoenix, though he visited often. Sarah married a young rancher from a neighboring spread in 1898, a good man who respected her fierce independence. They built their own place nearby, and Helena delighted in being close enough to see her daughter regularly. Grace became a teacher, following in her mother's footsteps. She took over the Vulture City school when the previous teacher retired, and she was brilliant at it. She married a mining engineer in 1901, and they settled in town. In 1905, Thomas made Helena and Quinn grandparents for the first time with the birth of his son. Sarah followed with a daughter in 1906. Grace had twins in 1907. The ranch house filled with grandchildren's laughter during visits, and Helena could hardly believe the abundance of her life. She and Quinn grew old together slowly, peacefully. Their bodies slowed down, but their minds stayed sharp, and their love remained constant. They still sat on the porch together every evening, still held hands, still talked for hours. In 1910, on a cool evening in October, they celebrated their 27th anniversary. The whole family came to the ranch. 3 children, 3 children-in-law, 5 grandchildren. The house was bursting with noise and love. After everyone left, Helena and Quinn sat on their porch one more time. She was 52, he was 55. They had lived a good life, were still living it. "No regrets?" Helena asked, the same question she had asked 20 years before. "Not a single one, you, none. Not one moment of this life we built." Quinn kissed her forehead. "Here is to the next 27 years. And beyond," Helena agreed. They sat together under the stars, 2 people who had found each other when they needed it most, who had built something beautiful from grief and loneliness and hope. The desert wind blew gentle and warm, carrying with it the scent of sage and possibility. Inside the house, the lamp burned low. Outside, the land stretched vast and open, the same land where they had built their life together. The same mountains rose in the distance, eternal and steady. The same creek ran through their property, its water sustaining the life they had created. Helena leaned her head on Quinn's shoulder, feeling the solid warmth of him, the steadiness that had been her anchor for nearly 3 decades. She thought about that day she had arrived in Vulture City, exhausted and grieving, with nothing but a single carpetbag and a fragile hope for a new beginning. She had found so much more than a new beginning. She had found a true partner, a family, a home, a purpose. She had found healing and joy and a love that had sustained her through everything life brought. "Thank you," she whispered to Quinn. "For what?" "For seeing me that day. For giving me rest when I needed it. For loving me when I did not think I could be loved again." Quinn turned to her, his dark eyes still as warm as they had been that day in the general store when their hands had touched over a bag of flour. "Thank you for letting me love you, for building this life with me, for making every day better than the last." They kissed, soft and sweet, the kiss of 2 people who knew each other completely and loved what they knew. The stars wheeled overhead, ancient and unchanging. Somewhere in the distance, a coyote called. The wind rustled through the cottonwoods by the creek. All around them was the life they had built together, solid and real and enduring. Helena thought about the future stretching ahead of them. More grandchildren, probably. More years of watching their children build their own lives. More evenings on this porch. More mornings waking up beside the man she loved. More of this good, simple, profound life they had created together. She had arrived in Vulture City with tired eyes and gentle hands, broken and grieving and hoping for just enough strength to keep going. Quinn had given her rest first, a place to heal and grow strong again. Then he had given her romance, courtship, love that grew slowly and surely like the sturdy trees they had planted around the ranch. But more than that, they had given each other partnership. They had faced struggles together, the hard work of building a ranch, raising children, surviving the difficulties that came to every life. They had celebrated triumphs together, every birth, every achievement, every quiet evening that felt like a gift. "I would choose you again," Helena said suddenly. "If I could go back to that day and do it all over, knowing everything that would happen, I would still choose you." Quinn's eyes grew bright with emotion. "I would choose you too, every single time." They held each other close, there on the porch of the house they had built together, surrounded by the land they had tended, wrapped in the love they had nurtured through all the seasons of their life. The grandchildren would grow. New generations would come. The ranch would continue, passed down through their family. The desert would endure, harsh and beautiful and eternal. And through it all, the love between Helena and Quinn would remain, woven into the very fabric of this place, this life, this family they had created. It was not the life Helena had imagined when she was a young bride in Missouri, planning a future with Daniel. But it was a good life, maybe even a better one for having been born from loss and healing. She had learned that happiness could come again after grief, that love could be found in unexpected places, that starting over was not giving up on what came before but honoring it by choosing to keep living. As they finally went inside for the night, Helena took one last look at the land stretched out before them in the moonlight. This was home. This was family. This was love in its truest, most enduring form. She followed Quinn inside, closing the door behind them, ready for whatever years remained. Ready to keep building this beautiful life together, one day at a time, with the same tired eyes that had arrived seeking rest, and the same gentle hands that had found work and purpose, and, eventually, romance. The lamplight flickered and held steady. Outside, the desert night settled in around the ranch, peaceful and protective. Inside, Helena and Quinn prepared for bed, moving around each other with the easy familiarity of decades spent together. They climbed into bed and Quinn pulled Helena close, her head on his chest, his arms around her. It was how they had slept for 27 years, and it still felt as right as it had on their wedding night. "Good night, my love," Quinn whispered. "Good night," Helena whispered back. They drifted off to sleep together, two hearts beating in rhythm, two lives perfectly intertwined, two people who had found in each other exactly what they needed. The quiet rancher and the woman with tired eyes had given each other everything: rest, romance, partnership, family, home, and a love that would last all their days and echo through the generations that came after them. In the morning, they would wake together and start another day on the ranch they had built. There would be work to do, children and grandchildren to love, a life to keep living. But for now, they slept peacefully in each other's arms, content in the knowledge that they had found something rare and precious. A love that healed, a partnership that endured, and a happiness that was all the sweeter for having been hard-won. The story of Helena Walsh and Quinn Norris was not one of love at first sight or grand dramatic gestures. It was a story of two wounded people who gave each other time and space to heal. It was a story of gentle hands and quiet strength, of rest given and romance earned, of a life built slowly and carefully from the ground up. It was a story that would be told by their children and grandchildren for generations to come, a testament to the power of second chances and the resilience of the human heart. It was a story that proved love could bloom even in the harshest desert, could thrive with patience and care, could last a lifetime and beyond. And it was a story with the best possible ending. Two people who loved each other, who built a good life together, who faced everything side by side, and who would continue to do so for all the years they had left. It was a story of happiness found and kept and cherished, of a home built on love and faith and hard work. It was, in every way that mattered, a story with a perfect ending.